Right, good morning. I'm loving this lectern moving up and down, it's fab. Right, welcome back. Hope you all feel fully refreshed, had a nice cup of tea or a cup of coffee. This is welcome to our next session, which is our panel session. I'm going to introduce you to Mike Burns from the University of Highlands and Islands. He is our host for the panel session, and again, in for a treat, we've got an hour discussion and debate across the floor. So, welcome Mike to the stage.
You've over-egged that one. Okay, no expectations set there then. Right, so we're going to talk about the Natalie titled Future of Technology in Universities, What Does Good Look Like? I didn't make that one up. So, can we get the panel to introduce themselves first, starting down the far end?
I'm Terry-Ann Hayman, I'm a student at Leeds Beckett.
My name's Eleanor Ingham and I'm a student at University of York.
Hello everyone, my name is Natasha Sosalem. I'm one of the heads of technology at Sky in Leeds, overseeing their digital service department, and I'm the founder of Empowering Women with Tech.
I'm Hector Minto from Microsoft from the last session.
Needs no introduction. Okay, I hope you're using our social media, hashtag USSC19. Don't forget we're also on Twitter at @USISA_SSG. Primark is still open at lunchtime if you haven't bought your Dayglow t-shirts for tonight. And as a nice little icebreaker, well again we'll start with Hector this time. Your favourite biscuit, USISA compulsory question, that one. And your favourite 80s song, bearing in mind you're actually one of the panel members who favourite 80s song.
Oh, goodness.
Because you're actually, you can remember that era compared to one of our panel members.
Wow, favourite biscuit is definitely Oreo with from the inside out. That definitely.
Ooh.
That's controversial.
I'm noting that one.
80s song, Huey Lewis and the News, parallel maybe. I remember going to see Teen Wolf and all that stuff.
Is that on our playlist?
Get it on
It
there.
probably will be at the end of tonight. Okay,
I'll stay.
Natasha.
Would a Florentine count as a biscuit?
No.
Oh. Shall we have a show of hands? It's a Florentine biscuit.
I divided the room.
We're ambivalent on that one. Okay.
Then I'll go for a custard cream.
Oh, okay. Sensible
play it
choice.
safe. My favourite song I think would be Wouldn't It Be Good by Nick Kershaw.
Oh, yeah.
Good choice, and I think that's definitely on the playlist tonight. Excellent. Okay then,
I love
Eleanor.
the ooh I got from the crowd.
Eleanor?
I'd have to say my favourite biscuit is anything with jam in, so I'm going for a jammy dodger.
Yeah.
Nice.
And Beatties was a little bit before my time, so I'll probably have to go with Wake Me Up Before You Go Go.
Okay, we'll go with that one. Okay, Terry-Ann.
I'm not really a biscuit kind of person. I think because we spoke about the 80s, I started thinking of biscuit adverts, so I'm stuck with Viscount for some reason. I remember that being younger. And 80s song, again, I was born mid-80s, and the only thing that stands out in my head is Boy George, Karma Chameleon.
Excellent, another good choice. Okay, so we're just going to highlight as well some of the antics from last night. You might have seen a little green chameleon going around the city centre. So a bit of a shout out to Susie as a thank you for being good sports with that one last night. I don't think they actually realised we'd borrowed the aforesaid animal until this morning. But they're doing quite a lot of work in academic programmes with open source, Linux, etc. Go and give them a hello and see if you can persuade them to let us have the monster at the end. That would be great. Okay, so nobody's mentioned Garibaldi's or Toffee Pops so far this conference. Very 80s biscuits. Disappointing. Okay, so to understand where we're going, we need to understand where we're coming from. And we were having a bit of discussion beforehand as to the types of technologies people were using before they came into the HE sector. What were they using in secondary school? Do we have mature learners who haven't had exposure to technology? So I'm going to start off with you, Terry-Ann, because you were talking about this. When you moved into HE, what scared you? What were you not used to? What was it?
You can laugh and I won't be offended, but the laptop spoke to me, and I'd not used a laptop before. I'd not used a computer for about 15 years from leaving high school. So I was just on the new Sony Ericsson slidey uppy smartphone, and I thought I was top notch with that. And I turned this laptop on and it said hello. So I phoned my brother. I said, why is the laptop talking to me? He said, that's what they do. I was like, really? But then I got a bit paranoid that it was spying on me. So I was like, can you come and sort the settings out and things? So for me, it was just how interactive it's moved on from when I was at school. It just seems to be everywhere you go, you need technology for everything.
Natasha, you were talking about, obviously, not in your job role, but as a mother, and the differences you're seeing now between how the younger generation are interacting with technology, which is different from even a few years ago. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm the mother of two. My baby is actually literally downstairs. And I have a 5-year-old. And my 5-year-old at home, we give her access to a tablet. But she is so now computer savvy with a tablet and with a mobile phone, but it's still at school. They're taught on desktop computers with the mouse, with, you know, still on a wire as well. And I think it's a really interesting thing because she is getting confused when she gets to school and she's trying to touch the screen. And, you know, I'm seeing some sage nods in the room, and it's a relatable thing because it's easy to get confused. So what do you do as parents or as HE or as in secondary education? Do you go down the tablet route? But then when you present a child then with a desktop computer or a laptop, are they actually going to understand what they need to do? Do you go down the desktop route still, or do you go towards laptops, since that is pretty much where businesses are going now? We need to be mobile. So at Sky, I don't think there is, I think there's maybe one desktop computer of, 700 people we have around the corner from here. Everybody has laptops. So, you know, laptop literacy is important in business. So I think those choices are really interesting, and I don't think there is a wrong answer, but when you are certainly looking at your education needs in a technology standpoint, which horse do you back? So I think for us now, we are teaching our child how to use the laptop and the tablet and actually not really doing desktop.
Do you think this is VHS versus Betamax? Is that where we're getting
I had a soft
to?
spot for a Betamax. But I think we're in a society now where we need to be more mobile. We need to respond to things, respond to change. And so I need to, at a moment's notice, you know, go down to London or to Scotland or to Europe. I can't really pack my desktop computer. And you know, I think we're in a world of cloud as well, so you could challenge that desktops, you know, could accommodate that. But I think, certainly from my standpoint, what I'm teaching my daughter is, you know, sort of basic OS literacy using tablet, but a laptop.
I think it was decided yesterday cloud is a dirty word and we're not allowed to talk about that. Al, wherever you are. If you have any questions, by the way, please put your hand up. We have our ball boys running across with microphones at any time. So just stick your hand up and we will get you sorted out. So where are we going with that? Eleanor, you've had a very different experience because you are younger. I have to watch how we say these things in these politically correct days. You were talking about a project that you've been working on in terms of how to increase the use of self-service in your own device. Can you talk a bit about that for us?
Yeah, so I was originally asked to come here by Sarah, who was in the audience at a University of York Library Innovator competition. So I entered this competition at uni, and it was about a way to innovate the library, and I kind of went with a technological stance. So to get into the library at York, you have to use your student ID. So when I went home, I live near Liverpool, so I went to Uni of Liverpool to do my revision over Christmas. And to get into the library, you use your phone. It's got a QR code on it. And I thought, how come they haven't got this at York? Because the amount of times I've left my card at home and got to the library and couldn't get in. So I kind of presented this idea, and the uni have kind of started taking it on board now, and I think that unis across the whole of the UK now are kind of switching from paper and cards to now having everything on your phone. Another example of that is at York, if you want to go to any of like the on-campus food places, you have to pay with your phone on an app called Yo-Yo. So rather than having the cash and stuff, it's all run through this one app. I kind of see universities across the UK kind of heading in that direction, like having everything on your own personal device.
Hector, obviously fantastic talk earlier on. It's caused a lot of discussion and debate. It's been going quite well on social media too. How are you doing early engagement? How are they approaching trying to understand what people want?
Yeah, so I was really fascinated about your experience of turning on a computer. I think that's really fascinating. So the speech actually that you're talking about actually is mainly for people who are blind. When you actually set up a device. So the out-of-the-box experience is designed to make sure that people who are blind can actually set up a computer on their own. So there's loads of work happening on onboarding people to tech, and how do we create that better onboarding experience so people get the most out of their tech rather than just remembering how they used their tech 10 years ago. So the thing I would keep an eye on this is natural language processing, and start thinking about how you can start using natural language processing in your own systems. So let me give you an example. Any chemistry graduates in the room? No? Come on,
One.
come on. Anybody do chemistry at school? Thank you, right. So for the non-chemistry graduates, like, you know when you type in carbon dioxide and you've got the little number at the bottom, do you all know how to get that little number to appear in your document? What's it called? Subscript. Did you know that? No. No, right, and exactly. Now, so how does somebody find a thing that they don't even know the answer for? Do they go into File, keep going through all the menus till they find that thing, or can they just go Alt-Q in Office, type in little numbers, and it takes you straight to subscript? Yeah? And that's the world we're trying to move to, where we don't say to people, you have to learn the language of this system. We actually say, you tell us what you want to do, and we will direct you to the setting. Yeah, we will direct you to the feature. We will direct you to the service. So there's a lot of work going on, and how do we leverage natural language processing to help people who are not tech savvy find their way to the things that they need? The other thing we're trying to start doing is advertising inside product. Because because most things are subscriptions now. I mean, you know this, Sky. Just coming over from Virgin, just on my way.
Good choice.
Yeah. But what we want is stickiness. We want people to kind of not leave. Yeah. And to make people not leave, you have to kind of keep telling people about the new thing that's there. So when we talked about things like the color filters for people that are colorblind earlier, we now advertise them in Windows. You know, you get pop-ups. You can turn them off. You know,
Did this not used to be known as the paperclip? Hey! And it used to help us with everything, and then you took it away, selfishly.
Let me carry on my not for Twitter thing. Do you know that Microsoft is not even allowed to use Clippy anymore? We don't actually even own the rights.
Really?
Clippy, yeah.
How on earth did that happen?
I don't know. But we actually got told off recently for saying we were going to reinvent Clippy. We were like, nope, that went 10 years ago.
Just as a really quick straw poll, in the course of your jobs, how many of you have been involved in early engagement with, say, local secondary schools, FE institutions? Who's actually gone out and seen what the people coming into our HE institutions are currently using? 1, 2.
And I think a lot of the time it depends on the teachers at the schools as well, because you really see a quality with people who are obviously more progressive to others, and obviously budgets play a part in this as well. But I think it's a really prudent point, because I've been to quite a few schools, with Sky for outreach, and I was so shocked at how wide it can be, to really old PCs to very progressive Macs, and
that was talked about yesterday as well.
Going back to Virgin now.
Yeah. And also very lovely Windows machines as well. But I get budget, and I think also it's about that talent, getting that talent into the sectors at the first place.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting point, because as technicians we hate talking to people ever. We just like sitting in offices doing stuff and workshops and things. And I think it's an interesting point, because Eleanor, you've probably most recently come from a secondary environment. What was the big difference you spotted when you went into HE?
So when I was in high school, it was kind of like ban on technology, pen and paper, and then when I went to university, I sat down in my first lecture, got my notepad out, and then the slides were just going so quickly, and I was like, I need a laptop with me, I can't use pen and paper anymore. But I've kind of noticed my little brother, who's still at the school, they've changed it so you have to bring an iPad or a tablet in now and use that, which I think would have probably helped me a lot more going to university, like having it at an earlier stage.
Yeah.
I mean, the types of, obviously you've got the hardware there, who pays for that? Is it something you think students should be paying for when they come into HE? Should it be provided by the institution? Who should drive that?
I think it's a really tricky situation, because it's not always going to be in people's budgets. And I think that we shouldn't be persecuting, or discriminating people because they can't afford hardware. Leeds has an incredible scheme called 100% Digital Leeds, where Leeds City Council, through the libraries, offer grants to people who want to buy a tablet through the credit union. And they also offer a tablet loan scheme. And so this is getting to the fact that we want more people accessing broadband technology. But the simple truth is that people don't actually have the hardware sometimes in their homes to even access broadband. So by lending people tablets, I think it's like 60 days, and then having lessons at the libraries to teach people how to use the tablets, and then giving them access to a grant to be able to purchase their own hardware afterwards. I think, those sorts of schemes, and we talked about it before the session, of do you as a university or as a HE offer a grant or a bursary to allow students from, different backgrounds the ability to purchase hardware? Because, I remember when I was a kid, I had the rubbishest bike ever. And my parents were, very Polish and very much, it's got 2 wheels, it goes, you're not getting a new bike. And all my friends had like the really modern mountain bike, and I had this sort of rally from the 80s. And I didn't do my bicycle proficiency test because I was so embarrassed to take this bike into school. And I know it's a really stupid analogy, but it is awful when you kind of feel, left out. And I think it's so easy to think that we all have access to these things when that simply isn't the case.
There's a role for government here as well. I mean,
Yeah.
The jobs of the future are digital. So we're just going to be creating a bigger digital divide if we keep some people back on this. So when we think about where the government should be spending its money, of course, it should be in making sure that people who are missing out on technology are getting it. I think it's also interesting what the broadband companies are doing actually in terms of helping people with the upgrade to technology. So as I shop around for my new broadband, it's quite common for me to get a Samsung tablet thrown at me, or I think that's helping.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Try living in my part of the world. You can't even get broadband in some places. But anyway, Terry Ann Eleanor.
We have. Well, I can come back to that. That's a
I
really.
I can guarantee we don't. Terry Ann and Eleanor, would you find, if an HE institution said to you, we want you to provide your own laptop, bring your own device, would you actually find that could be a barrier to some people? Are we getting to a point where actually you're going to have digital exclusion because the expectations that may be placed on our obsession as HE on bring your own devices, it saves us having to fix things, just sort it yourself?
For me, for me personally, when I bought my first laptop, it was out of my student loan, so it was quite a little chunk of money out of there. But I study youth work and I go into schools, and one thing I've noticed is that a lot more of the affluent schools and affluent areas kind of get these grants where schools are given iPads and things, and even children in some areas have been given Wi-Fi connections through companies at home and things. But then I'm finding in the more inner city and deprived schools, they maybe have 10 tablets for the whole school. So I see the divide in that sense, as in with the people I work with. I do think it's a good idea that we all carry our own devices for obvious reasons. You work and you've got personal things on there. But as a single parent with 3 children, I've crossed the divide from being in the benefit system. So that was where what was holding me back from technology before. I was never in a position to invest in it. Since becoming a student, it's become something I've needed, and it is more of an everyday thing, especially for my eldest son. He's 10, and if it's not the damn Fortnite game, which I hate, it's his schoolwork. So I do think it's a very important thing, but I do think there should be more support there for students, because sometimes I was embarrassed. I wouldn't have turned to the university and said, well, actually, that's quite a big chunk of my loan there that I've got to spend. I just thought, well, it's my student loan, I have to buy a laptop because I need it. So I think there should be a bit of flexibility depending on circumstances.
Absolutely.
do-
I mean, that ties in with government policy, like you were talking about, how digital skills of the future, digital jobs, but yet we're pushing the burden possibly onto the students.
I think we've also got to reflect on the true cost of hardware nowadays, though. I mean, this might sound flippant, but it has never been cheaper to get a PC. You can get extremely low-cost touch inking devices for $200 to $300 now, and that's not to be flippant about $200 to $300, but maybe there's a bit of we've got to start telling people it's not the huge expense they think it once was.
We have a question.
It's not a question, it's a comment. That's
Ooh.
still a lot of money to a lot of people. I grew up and I didn't have the internet growing up, and my first laptop was when I went to uni, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I didn't tell anybody I didn't have the internet at home. My mum got the internet last year, and I bought my baby sister a laptop because it was essential for her schoolwork. She has to go to the public library to print things off. So it is still a massive barrier to a lot of people, and it's an embarrassment, and people don't want to say. So a lot of people are missing out and not getting that access to tech.
I agree.
I think that's a very fair point. And, is that actually where the role of HE changes? Do they, instead of having physical paper-based libraries, do we become technology libraries where we're actually having to loan out this type of equipment? How many of you are using, for example, bookable laptop systems for people to do medium to long-term laptop loans? Anyone? See, there's a few there, so there's a bit of a divide starting to happen there already as well, in terms of that one. So what should we provide? Should we provide just really good quality Wi-Fi docking stations? Or do you still want PCs on desks in 5 years' time, or is that just a no-no now?
I think it's helpful to still provide PCs, whether it's in the form of a laptop as well, because in university there's a lot of group projects where you'll maybe meet in the library and all work together on one device, and it's quite nice sometimes going and just using one of the university computers. Like, although when I've done group projects in the past we all have our own devices, it's nice to sometimes just all sit around one device as well. So I think it's still good that universities offer like the choice as well.
It's also good for the desktops, I think, for newer users. Because if I'd have had a desktop when I first went into the lecture, I would have been a bit more confident, mainly because of my little mouse, which, by the way, I have a wireless one for my laptop because I'm a bit old school like that, which my son laughs at me for. But I think the desktop's for people that are not computer literate. It gives them a starting point, so at least they can get used to the basics, and then once they get confidence and maybe get funding or whatever it is that's stopping them, then they can move on. But I just went straight in with the device because I thought it was clever.
Question here.
Comment.
Oh, comment.
Every institution has to have an access and widening participation plan. And more, I think we need to be lobbying for IT to be a real part of that access and widening participation plan. The rules have changed recently. It used to be an annual plan, and now it can be up to 5 years, and the big ones have just been submitted. All have to be approved by the OFS. But it's a really important thing. If this is a barrier to people coming into higher education, you really should be lobbying whoever is responsible in your institution for that plan to look at how they can make that connection between the technology that people are using in schools and the technology that's being used in the institution. Because too much of this funding at the moment is still being spent on people going out into schools to talk about, what university life is like. Most kids know that now, and that can be done quite quickly. So it's other barriers that we need to be addressing. So that's just one way that you could be lobbying, and we will look at UCISA to see how we could perhaps give you some tools to help you with that.
Excellent, thank you. Somebody touched on literacy, digital literacy. Is this any you think that we're still not getting right? There's an assumption we make that people are literate when they come in, and actually they're not due to demographic. Natasha, I know you were talking about digital leads, I think it was.
Yeah, 100% digital leads, and I think it is a preconception that people have, sort of digital literacy skills. Certainly we're of the generations in here, half the room where it was taught in schools and the other half it wasn't. And, my mum, the internet generation kind of passed her by, and we've slowly started to teach her how to use tech, and she's incredibly fearful of it. And we've talked about this now. We're in a completely digital digital world. You can't get a job at Tesco's unless you apply for your job online. How many of your HE and your university things are online? And that's great, but if you are not digitally literate, if you have accessibility needs, and you do not support these people, then they are going to struggle and unfortunately probably fall out of the system, which is not what anybody wants. And so I think that there is a wider question around inclusivity and making sure that everybody can come to the party, whether that is offering a support group where people feel at ease if they've got any challenges with tech at your HEs at your universities. Also looking at if people do have accessibility needs, that there's JAWS or whatever is kind of installed on machines, so that university laptops have voice activated technology if they need it. And I think that wider question has to be addressed, because certainly 100% digital leads, it's made a huge difference. And we've just worked with Tech Mums, which is Dr. Sue Black's initiative, training up women in Leeds to get these basic skills. And it's simple things like, being a parent and not knowing, how to keep their children safe online. Their children are going on social media and they're reading all of these reports and getting scared and not knowing how to parent and support their children through what is, quite an increasingly intimidating place being on social media.
I think, did we have a comment over here, someone?
Yeah, this is actually going back to what you were talking about with the laptops and what we should be providing for students. And we're doing a review at the moment of our laptop loan service. And at the moment, we have about 100 laptops available for loan in cabinets in our library, but you can't take them out of the library. You need to use them there, and they're available on a one-day loan as long as you're in the library, but sometimes the battery goes dead. And there's been a few technical issues. But recently we've been looking at our stats, and most of the year there's only about 15 of them out of the lockers. About 85 of them are on the shelves. And we've come to the end of life, and we're sort of looking at how we might be able to do a slightly more creative version of the laptop loan. And I was interested in, do you have any comments on what you think would be most useful if students could get these on maybe a quarterly or an annual basis, if they could take them out of the library, if it could be geared more towards trying to help the students who actually need them, because we know a lot of the students have their own devices, but we want to help the ones maybe who need it a bit more, and how we might be able to do that?
My experience I've always taken my own since I've bought it. It's my pride and joy, but a lot of the students I see on my course that tend to borrow them, it's just out of ease, so that they can leave their own at home and just grab one. They don't have to carry it on the train or whatever. So I couldn't probably best answer that one. I don't know, maybe on your course.
Yeah, we've in University of York, and in the library we've got the same kind of system with the lockers, the laptops in, and I do see people going over to use them, but on my course it's kind of I've never really seen anyone really use them like in a lecture or stuff. I think if someone does need to use a computer at my uni, they kind of go to one of the desktops maybe. But yeah, the laptop system doesn't seem to really take off that much at my uni.
I do see them getting used, but I think it depends on the nature of your course. Obviously I'm youth work studies and community studies, so it's just relevant for our actual work, what we're doing in the lectures. So again, I think it's more a thing of convenience for some people, so they don't have to carry and lug their own round.
I think it's based on trust. So, one of the questions I ask the libraries is, you're lending out these tablets, do many go walking, kind of being quite, Anyway, and I did ask, did they get damaged? If you go walking? And the answer was, after I think about, a year of this, no. They all came, a couple of scratches on the side, nothing on the screen, no damage, they all came back. And I think it's based a relationship of trust. If you're lending these things out, you set expectations. People usually are, especially, students, and being respectful of getting something that they need. It's not that they want, that they need. People are respectful of it. And I think that, I would be of the inclination, let people have them for a few months, and offer grants for getting them broadband at home as well, but that's me, I think.
I think there's an education piece as well for the students to understand that their information is instantly available on any device. So when you think about their OneDrive or their whatever you're using, I wonder how many, especially those who maybe don't have the digital skills, realise that you can be very quickly into your files, your work, your ecosystem. And I think you would get more use if we promote that part of it. I mean, who remembers the last time, when they had their iPhone replaced, and you were like, within 5 minutes, you were like, is my iPhone back? Yeah. And we're getting to that stage with PCs as much as we can. So yeah, I think there's a digital skills education piece there. The other thing, just to come back on the kind of the overarching piece of digital skills and digital jobs, there's a really interesting project we're working on with Grimsby Institute of Higher Education, where they're doing like a digital skills upskilling program, but it's for everyone. Like literally the catering staff are doing digital skills courses as much as the IT teams are, as much as the lecturers. And I think that's a very interesting thing, especially as the jobs of the future go digital, to get that lived experience of tech across the kind of the wider state. Wouldn't we like to move to a world where one of the caterers comes and borrows a laptop, so, to work with their child, or to work on their next job application or whatever.
As long as the laptop makes a cup of tea, it'll be fine. Henrik, you have a comment question?
It's just a comment really on the chat about loan laptops. So we installed that service last year, and it's gone down a storm with our students. And just as what's echoed up there, it's not that some of the students don't have their own laptops. It is convenience, but it is also security. So they don't have to bring in their own laptop and leave it around. That we have got an issue with security. I think you would have in any open space like this, where you've got lots of students sitting about. And I think we just have to accept that. So what we brought in was a service that had a low-cost laptop. You've got a branding option, by the way. You can put a big sticker on the lid, which is what we did. So you can sell your other services through there. So use it. and work with your digital comms team to promote the service that way. I think it's an absolutely perfect service to allow more accessibility for students that either whether they have them or not, convenience, they want to work more agile, more mobile in that sense. So we allow them to take the laptops anywhere pretty much on the campus, preferably in the library of course. There are issues with them, but I think in a year, I think we only had one get busted, as in it got dropped, and a couple of other ones that just broke for other reasons. I don't believe a single one's got stolen, and I think that's a really good sign.
Absolutely, trust. And I think kind of widening the discussion on tech, one of the things the BBC did, which was brilliant when I worked there, is we had an area called the Blue Room, and what we would have is effectively, it'd just be a walk-in area where we had one of some of the newest tech going. So when the Oculus, the VR headset came out, we had an Oculus in there. Whatever progressive technology, we would purchase one or two of them and put them into the Blue Room so that if we were testing stuff at the BBC, we could go into the Blue Room and kind of test on some progressive, new devices. But it was a great opportunity for people who were not maybe working in technology, just to, they'd heard about Oculus, or I can't think of anything more interesting, but you know what I mean, like go into the Blue Room and play with it, and there'd be somebody to support them to actually use this tech. And I think, taking it a step further, could you guys do that at your institutions and have a bit of a Blue Room space where you can
learn inking?
Yeah, exactly. Have a 3D printer, or but spike that interest, because whilst we're talking about careers in tech, every career will have tech in it now. If you have to use Office or you have to apply online, it might not be coding, but every career path now, you have to touch technology at some point.
Yeah.
Before we carry on, David, you have a question at the back.
Yeah, well, it's not a question, it's a bit of a story, and it's not about higher education either, but
Can you save it for the pub?
So it relates to my parents. So my parents have both passed retirement age now, and I don't think they quite appreciated what it would be like to spend all day with each other. So to get around that, my dad has decided to do a voluntary driving job with the patient transport service for the NHS, so taking patients who can't make their way to the hospital for them. But even to get that job, which he doesn't class as a job, he just sees it as a voluntary thing that he's doing to help out, he had to fill out an online application form. Now my mum and dad don't have a computer. My mum's got an iPad, which she's really good with, but the software wasn't designed to run on Apple's kind of operating system. So my dad had to go to a library, which he hasn't done for about 40, 50 years. So that was a whole bit of a drama around that. Eventually he applied, he messed up the application the first time round, but he managed to get the job. But the condition of the job is that all of his kind of instructions on who he needs to pick up and when comes through a smartphone, which he has completely refused in his life to ever get. He does not do technology. So that was an experience that I had just after Christmas, where I had to teach him how to use an iPhone, and he threw the phone at the wall, and it was a nightmare. But he got there eventually. So it was, the fact that people are now digitizing everything, it doesn't mean that people are going to be able to use it. But I will say, what they haven't managed to digitise yet is the bit where he claims his petrol money back. So you can submit your expenses online, but he sticks to his principles and he fills out a paper form every month. But that just leads to arguments about where my mum's left the envelopes.
There's nothing wrong with paper. This has all been done off a paper notebook. Hendrik, sorry.
I really do. I think that's such a great idea. One of the things I'm trying to build at Queen Mary is something along those lines, but talking to our lecturers, our academics. So we want to set up a Blue Room equivalent for teaching. So how can we improve the teaching so it fits alongside the pedagogy of the university? Quite often we think in silos. So we're IT, we're AV, we just look at what needs to go in a projector or screen. We need to think way beyond that. So I'm trying to set up a coalition with, could be a coalition as well actually, we'll see, with our e-learning team, with our academics, and potentially that could also include the students, to see what is possible in a teaching space. We know they're moving to this kind of cabaret style setup that we're in now, so the teaching room of the future will look different, and there's potential that they probably will need different technologies, but there's also potential for stuff out there that we don't know about. So it's working with the suppliers, it's collecting all of the different areas up. Suppliers, the people that supply it, that support it, which is us, the lecturers that are going to be consuming that service, the students that are going to be consuming that service. I think it's really important that we have those drivers.
And I think I was going to say, it crosses everything. So for example, VR in healthcare, they're using VR now if you're going for an extensive operation, piloting, giving you a VR headset where the VR program will show you the procedure that you're about to go under. Used in social work, it's used in all kind of walks of life, and I think that having that, it would really benefit, like you say, lecturers, maybe change some of their teaching techniques, but also kind of open up students and lecturers' possibilities to where technology is going.
Can I pull it back though? Because one of the risks of a kind of the blue room concept is that you go way too far into the future without actually focusing on what's here and what's now. I mean, the wows in the room when I showed people you could magnify a screen earlier was a little worrying. But that gets as much wow from a teacher because their role, they want to convey information in an impactful way. Gary and I were playing around with 3D morphing in PowerPoint earlier, which was super cool as well. Like there's stuff that's built in here now that teachers are not even taking the time, or educators are not taking the time to actually go and learn that's there now, without having to go too far into virtual reality and augmented reality. Not that I don't get super excited by that as well. I just think, there's a whole piece of work to be done on unlocking what you've already got.
There's an argument there, isn't there, about who should be driving those changes, though? Is it technology? Is it the pedagogy? Is it teaching and learning? Are we guilty of we're pushing so much technology, even our teaching and learning staff can't keep up? There was a comment
that presumes, though, that the technology evolution is not being driven by pedagogues.
Yes.
Which it increasingly is.
Yes, it's a very messy one. Comment up the back there, was it? Oh, it's me.
That was myself. Hector, you mentioned something about using your own data, and I was just wondering if anyone's looking at making my own phone, for example, which I carry with me everywhere if I forget my card, and instead of providing me with a laptop or a desktop, just providing me with a chair and a way that my phone can be projected onto a bigger screen. I can use a keyboard.
You need a Windows phone. No.
Yeah.
We've had this idea. It didn't go well.
I think as the idea went through my head, I just thought, actually, you know what? All my data is clouded. So and I don't know if I even need a device anymore.
Correct.
I just need to sign in somewhere. So actually, I think I've kind of come round, as I was waiting to ask this question, I've come back and said it's not a question now.
Trust me, I'm 95% in the cloud with all my data. Yeah. So, yeah. I definitely think it's going that way.
I've definitely gone device agnostic. I use a Fire Stick, an Alexa, an Android phone, an iPad, a Chromebook, and actually it's the content, not the thing.
Yeah,
so,
I agree with that.
Yeah. So maybe we should stop focusing on things and actually just focusing on the data and the content and just making that easier to find.
I suppose it depends if you've got software that you need to use as well, and I think that's, I couldn't, personally from my side of things, I'd have to think of all the things that I would need to install. Whilst I love OneDrive, I've got all of that, but then I have lots of programs and things that I run that I need to get onto very quickly, and then with, two-factor oath, it will take me some time to just get logged in on everything. So I think if you're saving documents and data and stuff like that, I think that absolutely, but I think if you're running any sort of programs and software, it's getting better. I mean, if you use Creative Cloud, I suppose you could hit that, but not every program is there yet.
We've got another one at the back there, Mike.
Natasha's actually just picked up on part of my question, that when I started the university 30 plus years ago, I was having to teach people how to get capital letters on the keyboard. They never even used a typewriter. And that was terminals to a mainframe. From there we evolved to desktops. Now we evolved to laptops. That's where we are now. Looking to the future, how do you think people will be wanting to access our HE services? Just picking up on the comment there about, do we need devices? Maybe we just need a phone that plugs in somehow. So how do we do that? And also, how do we provide the software and the support? Because when people are coming with a plethora of different devices, whatever the next thing is, how do we as support people offer training, answers and things when there's such a wide variety of equipment?
Let's split that into two, because I've actually got these written down. Yeah. So the first one, where are we going with it? In terms of the hardware, etc., where do you think we're going to be in 5 years' time?
I notice increasingly we start development programs with all platforms in mind. So on my thing in terms of accessibility and disability inclusion, we're investing as much on the iPad experience as we're investing in the Windows experience, because fundamentally, not to get, if you get back to the business model's around subscription. That's the way it's going. So any business should be leveraging, should be getting cash in from other people's platforms. I mean, it's like why would you miss that? Why would you miss that opportunity? But that's a good thing in that it means that from the very outset we're designing with all those platforms in mind. So I definitely think you're going to see. I don't think people do people still define themselves as Mac users? I mean,
yes.
You're straying into very controversial territory.
No, but it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's like increasingly, I wonder if my kids will define themselves as Mac users. Yeah, I think they will. They're much more about the function. They would consider themselves a Netflix user before. I'm getting it back now. No, but my kids consider. If you look at the way Xbox is going, that's going complete away from device. Mm-hmm. Like that's a login. You're going to be able to get to Xbox from your PC, from your phone, or from your console. Yeah, and the content's going to be a rich experience wherever you go. So I definitely think we're moving away from. People will still have their flagship hardware, the thing they love, the piece of kit that they designed, but they're going to want to make sure that they're not missing out on the revenue from other people's platforms.
Eleanor, what would you see in 5 years' time if you were just about to go into HE? What would you expect to be there when you got there?
I think if I was about to start university now, I would kind of expect myself to have my own device. I think it's quite common now that you wouldn't think that the university would provide stuff for you. When I started university, there was no emails or information about whether you didn't have a device. I think a lot of institutions also assume that students nowadays, as with technological aging, just will have their own device already. And then obviously students like yourself, some might not have that, and it's kind of well, what do I do? There's no clear options for you. I think it's just assumed.
So it ties into the next part of Mike's question there. So if people are coming in with their own devices, how should we be supporting you? Should we be helping fix things? Should we be providing the software? Do you want us to tell you when there's an outage via Snapchat, for example? I mean, I don't know how silly it gets. But what support do we then have to provide in that situation? Yeah,
I do think it's quite annoying when maybe your laptop breaks and you kind of have to pay with that with your student loan, for example. In first year, my laptop broke and I needed it fixed straight away because I couldn't access any of my online readings or lectures without going to the library, really. So I think maybe something with funding, maybe with repairs. Programs in uni. In second year, I did research methods. We had to use a program called SPSS. I couldn't access that on my laptop, so I had to go into the university to access that. So maybe Microsoft Word's obviously free for students. So maybe, I don't know about other subjects, but I assume there's a lot of programs for subjects which aren't free maybe to the user, and you have to go to the university.
We've got a comment over there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was thinking it would be a good idea, the trend clearly is now to move into the cloud, even if it's a bad word, but all this conversation made me think that would it be nice to have a personalized profile of a person, so when they log in into any device, for that to be recognized as the person's needs, and they will have their software installed for them. It can be either a personal work, it can be either something related to their employment. So if I go to the university, I'm a staff member, I need 5 pieces of software that I need to do my work with. Instead of me going into this application, then install those pieces of software and then, or wait for approval, they should be automatically on login, done for me. Mm-hmm. So I just can go and do my work. And the same should be for students as well.
It's changing the licensing model of
Yeah.
how all these works, and do the manufacturers understand that, and the software providers. We've got one at the back here.
Yeah, just picking up one of a comment there. One of our most popular services with students, we have a laptop surgery, and students can bring their own devices in. If something's gone wrong with them, obviously with the permission of the student, we can open up the device, we'll have a look at it, see if we can fix it. If it's something that we cannot fix, we'll advise them on where we think the best place to go is to get that fix on a cost basis. And it's just really taking on that fact that we realise that it's so integral to their education that you need to try and help them get up and running as quickly as possible. And we have a loan service as well that sort of also helps with that. But going forward, I think that's definitely the way, is that we're going to have to assist students who have their own devices in making sure that those devices are available for them to work on.
Okay, one at the front.
So carrying on this thought about software, increasingly a lot of our corporate software is software as a solution, and therefore it is available everywhere. If you'd asked me 10 years ago whether I would be able to run Word on a web browser rather than my desktop, I wouldn't have believed you. But increasingly we can do Office in Office 365. It's not quite as good, but it's getting there. I do complicated stuff in Excel. But why not other software? Why not SPSS as a service rather than on the desktops? Perhaps we should be saying to our suppliers, this is the direction of travel. I'd be interested to hear whether the panel thinks that that's where the industry is going anyway.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, your point earlier, anything that could be subscription to the, look at where Adobe's gone. I liked the question earlier as well about the 5 to 10 years, because I think we're in an era of...
3 months.
Yeah, exactly. But we're in an era that everybody wants things now. People want things on demand, and they want things customised and personalised to them, as your point made, And I think that, 5 to 10 years, it'd be really interesting to see the opportunities you could have. Domino's, for example, Domino's Pizza. You can order a Domino's Pizza online. You can obviously still ring in, and you can go into the shop. But you can also order a pizza through Slack. You can order a pizza through Twitter. You can order a pizza through Alexa, through Google Assistant. You can even order a pizza through your Ford communication system while you're driving. Now, I'm not suggesting that you guys go so far, but do you look at students being able to ask Alexa for their schedule today? And thinking about the possibilities around that, because in an era where students are getting more savvier, and we have to be careful not to leave people behind, but these are relatively simple things. These are data feeds that you already have that you can just repurpose. But answering the question of 5 to 10 years, I think if you think about on-demand and personalisation as your two key drivers, I think that's what people will expect of you, with the mindfulness of privacy. Because people like personalisation and customisation, but people are also very mindful of how their data is being used as well.
Conscious of time, that's the second product placement for Domino's. I think something's going on.
I didn't hear this.
Lancaster yesterday. Comment over here.
Hi, Eleanor. I'm Jo Loftus, and I manage... Can you hear me? Eleanor, I manage the IT support office at York. So I just want to say I'm really sorry that we didn't get the message across to you about that you could download SPSS for free, and also that we do have an agreement with a repair company, slightly discounted price for students. It's something I'd like to catch up with you later about. How we send emails out to new students before they start, so it's maybe a different media, a better way to get in touch with students before they start. So I'd love to take that with you later.
We've another one over here.
I think there's also an interesting thing here, though, in terms of when people miss information or don't get the message that we all want them to have, why have they not received the information? Now, do we need to start looking at the whole chatbot thing, the natural language, what they call that question versus what you call that question? I think there's something very interesting there as well, in terms of should you be able to have a conversation with your university computer, your education computer, that asks the sorts of questions that you want the answers to in the words that you want. So I think that's coming as well in terms of another access method.
Thanks. Sorry, when I did my Enter the Library competition, I kind of spoke about producing an app for students. So, as you said, you're part of the IT services, like, we don't hear much about that. So when I had my research method lectures, we were never told, like, if you go to IT service, you can download this, whatever. I think there's miscommunication, and as you said, like, technology is moving a lot, like, very forward. And I think for people my age now, apps are where we get our information from. Like, like people my age are always on their phones, so maybe having an app for a university where you can type in and say,
Chatbot.
yeah.
But I think it's really interesting because it goes back to communication techniques. I think that for some stuff, emails, some stuff face-to-face. And I think that you, as a strong communicator, you identify the situation and reinforce the message maybe through different mediums, because I totally get it, I'm probably an app girl as well, but there will be proportions of people who will be like, no, do you know what, I don't want that, I want to have, you know, a face-to-face. And I think, you know, certainly one of the things even in Sky, we will do emails, we'll sit down with people, we'll also do the update in Slack, and we kind of cover all channels based on how people want to consume data.
We'll just jump over here.
Sorry, you can hear me,
yeah.
I think, yes, technology is obviously a driving factor, and it changes and moves so fast, and I feel as I've got older, it has gone like a roller coaster. There's always new initiatives and new technology coming on board and new things we can do, which is fantastic. I think it also goes hand in hand with sustainability. I know it's a very idealistic point of view, but it would be nice to think that if a student joins a university and then for that duration of their period of study through to qualification, graduation, that they have the equipment that will last, accessibility to all the software, the products they need, without interruption, if you've got backward compatibility, or that cross-compatibility as well with software and the hardware they're using, so that experience from start to finish, however many years it might be, 5 years, is a continuous process. I think it's something to think about as well.
It's a continuous iteration, not, you know, you want it to stay the same for 5 years. Yeah.
We'll just jump over here.
This is to Terry Ann. So when you started uni, do you think it would have been useful to have an option to actually buy a laptop from the university that came with the software and things you needed for your course, so that you had that option there, you weren't having to buy it before and you weren't really sure what to get and all of that?
I think there could have been better guidance there, but in all honesty, I don't want to like push things on other people. At the end of the day, I've made an active choice to go to uni. I kind of knew that things had been entailed in that. But there was a few different points I wanted to try and tie together in one comment, like the whole, maybe if each uni had a set thing, you know, where, okay, Leeds Beckett, we run on Microsoft, so everybody knows when they're in uni, that's what you run on. Maybe if there was some sort of guidelines so people understood, right, when I'm in this institution, this is what I have to follow. But support-wise, without being harsh to the younger students, and I'm really not, but I, as a non-tech person, so it might just be my non-tech brain, I've had to kind of sit with the VLE portal and literally mess about and go through, and all the things that people say, so many of my students, we can't access our emails, how do you find out about this? It's all there, but I think the app doesn't, if it doesn't interest them, they're not going to take the time to go out and learn it. It's not something particularly that interests me being on the VLE, but I need it so I can understand what I need to do. And so as an adult independent learner, which is what I am, I don't have to keep running to people, so I've took the time to suss that. So sometimes when I'm in a lecture and the students go, well, how can you access this? And I'm thinking, for goodness sake, we're in 2 years now and you still don't know. So I think there's sometimes as a student, you've got to kind of take the onus onto yourself and think, okay, there are things available. I know there's study skills sessions, so I can go to a library. I'm aware that there's also somewhere in my uni where I can take my laptop for certain repairs. So I know there are little pockets of support, but that's not through necessarily being told. That's me taking the time to explore myself, what's there in front of me. So maybe if there was more of a guide or a code to follow for students and staff who would say, right, we're all following Microsoft or Google or whichever one's not swearing in the room today. And then everybody would go into uni that day and we would all know and follow the same path. But that just might be my non-tech brain thinking, non-logical.
So we're just about to wrap up. So we want everything for free. We want everyone to be digitally literate. We want everyone to order their pizzas from Domino's. And we want everything, everywhere, basically. Prediction time. Tomorrow's World. That's from the 80s. Does anyone remember Tomorrow's World? Yes. Can you name me a presenter from Tomorrow's World? Oh, not Maggie Philbin.
Maggie
That's
Philbin.
usually the one people go for. outside of HE, just in the world, what's the thing you want to see invented in the next 25 years that doesn't already exist in the Internet of Things?
A remote for children.
I thought we had that last night with a remote control cushion. I thought that could almost do it.
Maybe something like flying cars, you don't have to get stuck in traffic, something like that.
I think tomorrow's world promised us that 30 years ago.
Oh gosh, come back to me. I need to think about it. Throw it back to you.
I think auto-configuration is coming. I genuinely think that's coming. I think your computer will know how you're behaving in front of the computer and adapt intelligently.
I'm glad you added the word computer. I had visions of auto-configuring humans there, and Skynet was on the way. Come on, Natasha, you're not getting away till you tell us one.
I don't know. I think electric driverless cars. I can't drive. I'm Miss Taxi Queen, so Uber. You know, I know it's not always the most popular thing, but it is like genuinely the best thing ever for me. So I'm kind of sticking to my guns that I don't need to drive because driverless cars are just around the corner, and
They've been just round the corner for a while.
Yeah,
the driverless car hasn't got round the corner, it's stuck back in the corners. So listen, give them a massive round of applause. I think they've done a brilliant job.